welcome to Greige Against the Machine, the podcast where we celebrate the extraordinary talent and accomplishments of lesser-known and even unknown artists and creatives. I'm Lisa Catara alongside Justin Harvey, and each week we'll explore the minds and stories of the journeymen and women behind your favorite films, shows, ads, music, and more. Those who craft magic without the red carpet spotlight or public eye, because everyone has a unique story to tell, and sometimes the most inspiring voices are the ones you haven't heard yet. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Greige Against the Machine. We are back with another exciting, fun episode. It's getting close to the holidays. I don't know about you, but I'm already getting in that mode.
How are you not? It's December and you have children.
I know, and there's already been snow, and that was like the thing that triggered
right.
it in my brain, and so I've been in a panic, running around, starting to get ready for that. Why are you up all night? You're like up until like 2 a.m. every night. What's going on?
Okay, don't laugh. In the middle of pandemic, I heard about this singer named Taylor Swift, and she was practically like shoved down my throat. I'm like, who the heck is this singer? And I couldn't escape. Like, it was on TikTok, it was on my Yahoo. I kept seeing bits and seeing interviews with her.
You said pandemic.
Yeah. So okay, I know
a little behind.
So last night, give me a second, was the final performance of her epic Eras tour. And I was like, you know what?
The $2 billion grossing Eras tour. $2 billion grossing Eras tour.
Like 11 million people who went and saw it. I mean, it's just incredible. So I was like, I've been paying attention to it enough because this woman, to be honest, she talks like me. She says things that I say. She seems to believe what I believe in. She represents herself and does things in her performing that I did when I was trying to get my career going. And I'm like, wow, it's like watching a version of myself if I actually fucking made it. Like if 9/11 never happened and I got to do it, It would be like a little teeny little percentage of what she's doing. And she's awesome. She's awesome. So I stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning and like, I was a Swiftie for a night.
For one night. Well, first of all, I've been a Swiftie for a long time, and
don't brag.
Well, come on, like, and she sealed the deal when I found out she likes dudes from Cleveland. Can't be any better than that, right?
Yes, but only a few of us are distinguished alumni from Cleveland Heights High School, Justin.
Yeah, wait. How are you a distinguished alumni and the Kelseys aren't? We'll get into that later.
Yes, they are.
We all went to the same high school.
They got in before I did. Oh yeah, they got in before I did. Mm-hmm.
Just because they knocked a few people down and tackled.
Because football, yeah.
Because football,
but
sports ball.
Forget Cleveland. I am excited because we had a guest tonight who's a personal friend and one of the most amazing human beings I've met in Hollywood. I'm allowed to brag. We have Shaan Sharma here tonight. I think you're going to love him too.
Let's bring him in and say hello to Shaan and see. Let's hear some of his hardworking Hollywood story, because that's what we're here for, right?
Let him prove me right.
All right. What an intro.
I mean, it's the roses, the petals. I have to put them out for you. You're my people. Hi, darling.
Well, and I've heard a ton about you just from Miss Lisa over there alone. That you're one of us, and there are many of us out there, but we're so happy to have you on the show. As people who haven't seen this yet should know that this is really about finding those stories out there and the people out there that are making all of these fun things that we all consume and that we all enjoy, and the art and creativity of it. And it's not all George Clooney's, as I say. Like, all of us aren't the top 1% of A-listers. There's 98% of us out there doing the hard work of making it all happen, and we know that you're one of them. So we're very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you
for that. So Shaan, I just discovered something about you. So people know, like, Greige is the area that isn't famous. It's the people who work consistently, us journeymans in the entertainment fields, all of the music and art and all that, but the ones you don't really necessarily recognize off the bat. Mm-hmm. You've been around a while, but there was one thing that I'm going to have to read that I didn't know about you that kind of makes me mad because I wish I did.
Oh.
And I quote, mm-hmm. I'm not psychologically qualified to self-diagnose whether I was born to be an artist or whether it was my escape from being me, but music was my first love. I'd skip whole days of high school to pull the gorgeous grand piano out from its locker onto the huge stage in total darkness and exorcise the demons from my brain and my heart and the pain of being an eccentric, overshadowed, only friend of the hot guys in my grade and in our rock band onto those ivory keys. Brother, I didn't know you were a music lover. That's my first love, and Justin's too.
Yeah, I learned to play the piano just by sticking around after school and going to school early because I never wanted to be home. It was a tough childhood, and so I taught myself to play, and that led to me joining a band in my high school, and I have some magical memories from those times.
I want photos and I want videos of this band.
Don't
want
give her the
photos.
photos.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That's right, because that's how I sound.
Boots. Is it boots or boots? Boots?
You know, I got the standard American accent because I grew up in front of the TV, so I don't have that Minnesotan thing, and I can't even fake it. That's just not
What?
it's not my my bag is accents.
Wow. So you were a theater nerd.
Yeah, I call myself an executive nerd actually because we were the cool kids, but we happened to also do plays as in addition to sports and in addition to being in a band and in addition to playing dorky strategy board games from 8 p.m. to 5 in the morning. And so I feel like my crew in high school was incredibly well-rounded. And so
Nice.
So yeah, it was a really blessed time, and it was also one of the worst times just in my personal family life. So, but whose is it in high school, right?
Well, I mean, beyond the obvious of hormones and growing and trying to find your place in life, like I think all of us come from a kind of unique upbringings. We'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Things to talk about. So you're in good company here.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that motivated you to Hollywood, which is where I know you from?
Yeah, after I graduated from high school, I really pursued music in the Twin Cities and in kind of the Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota area. I started a music booking company called the Acoustic Showcase, where I would book 4 or 5 of us for a show at a club or a college or a place. And we would invite all of our fan bases, and it became the most successful kind of regular acoustic night of music in the Twin Cities for a few years. And so that was really what I was pursuing. But then I was acting on the side, and then I was working for a company up until around 2006. And then that company ran out of money. And so I thought this might be a good time to make the move to Los Angeles to pursue my dreams in music and acting at a higher level. And
that was about 2008-ish, 2007, 2008?
Well, I was on a trip for that company in 2004, and because one of my best friends from high school, who was actually in my high school rock band, lived in Venice out here. And so he had me stay on his couch, and we went out to Enterprise Fish Company in Venice out here. And there were 3 like middle-aged women that were there. And we were just hanging out and got involved in the conversation with them. And before we knew it, one of them said, "Shaan, I think you should move to LA." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "I think you'd do well here." I said, "I'm scared of LA." She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I don't know. I grew up just seeing all the horror stories on the news about how there was so much violence and this and that in LA. And if you pull off on the wrong road, you're going to get shot." And it's, I was around, 12, 13 years old when there were the riots in Los Angeles. And
That's right.
Like, everything you see about LA in movies and TV shows is guns and drugs and gangs and all that. And then other than that, it's like, bougie Hollywood and bougie Beverly Hills and all this. So she said, "Listen, LA is just like any other city. It's just bigger." And so it kind of stuck in my memory, so that when the opportunity came around 2006, 2007, my girlfriend at the time, she and I just saved up for a year and we moved out to LA. And then we ended up moving into the same apartment building that I had stayed on my best friend's couch when I first came out here. Awesome. And that was the start of my journey here in LA. I acted in a high school as a way to escape from what was going on in my life at the time. And I was invited in. It wasn't something that I seeked out. It's something that I was invited to audition for by the director of the high school musicals. And then as I became an adult and got into the professional business out here, now acting is not at all about escaping from my life. I have a very privileged and blessed life. It's all about experiencing the beautiful variety of human relationships and time periods and professions and themes and all of that. And it brings amazing people like you, Lisa, into my life. And now, Justin, I'm getting a chance to meet you. And so, yeah, I'm in love with acting for a very different reason now than when I was a kid.
Oh, no doubt.
I find exciting too, because you know, as Lisa and I have discussed before, when I first got into doing unscripted stuff, like it was just a light bulb moment for me. How do you think you got to the light bulb? Like what was the process that took it from, you know, the experiential moments that you were having in high school into profession, but then understanding that you had a love for it? Like, was there a specific moment? Was there a part of the process? Was it totally natural to you? How'd you get to this actual genuine integral love with what you do for your art?
Yeah, I think that I'm on this planet for a very specific reason. I almost didn't survive my childhood. There was a lot of self-harm ideation and a lot of trauma in our family. And, you know, my parents are both immigrants from India. I was a first generation born in this country. It was not easy to be the only person of color in an all-white community, all-white high school and junior high and elementary school. I think there were a couple other kids by the time I got to high school that were, you know, minorities. But so it was just it was a tough time. My father wasn't mentally well. My mom and him divorced when I was a senior, and that was a really traumatic thing for my family. And it was also something where my girlfriend at the time, her family was also going through divorce at the exact same time. So we kind of trauma bonded during that period.
Sure.
So for me, like I really felt like God preserved me and my life for a specific reason. Otherwise, there's no reason I should have survived all of the things that I was going through at the time. And so I feel like I'm only here to make the biggest positive impact I can on as many people as possible while I'm alive. And whether that is done through music, whether it's done through business, whether it's done through acting, you know, I've always been an artist. I've always expressed myself through drawing, singing, you know, music, performance, acting. So I don't feel like my artistry defines me. I feel like my purpose defines me. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
The way that I express that has changed through the course of my life. It used to be about music, then it was about business, then it was about acting, and now it's been about union service and community building and defending our profession from the forces.
You and I met when you were a casting associate. You did a lot of commercials, and commercials were my bread and butter at the time. I got the pleasure of meeting you there, but we bonded.
Casting session director. Casting session director,
for sure. The buffer between who does everything. And we bonded there, but we really bonded in advocacy. You know, we're both pro-union, and the amount of union work that you and I have done initially, you do it way, way well and beyond what I'm capable of now. And your commitment to union rights and labor rights and your involvement in our strikes. You and I have been through 2 strikes now together, which are not fun, but necessary. A lot of that ties into the purpose. We share purpose. The art is a means by which to facilitate these things and these messages we put out into the world, but it's really the purpose that drives all of it. How we can use it as a service to help people and lift them up. Yeah. I love and admire that about you. I really, really do.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came into my life. It was really like the pandemic and solidarity evenings that brought so many of us together at such a dark time. And now so many of the people who we shared those Wednesday nights with are now in positions of leadership on negotiating committees and on committees and on the board, and just making a huge impact on our community. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so
I want to ask you guys both this. You know, I was just kind of looking at the Thanksgiving box offices and whatnot, and I felt good about Hollywood for a minute. And it's been up and down for all of us in various ways. But I looked at some of those returns and I was like, okay, we had some movies that did really good. People are very happy. They enjoyed their time at the theater. People went back to theaters, which was always is a really positive thing. So I'm kind of curious, you know, coming from your standpoint, from both being activists in the acting community and also actors yourselves, how are you guys feeling right now about what the future is in this holiday season? I don't even want to look too much further beyond that. Like, are we back on the right track now? Does Wicked and Gladiator 2 and Moana 2 and a little bit Red 1, like, are these movies having success a good sign for us, or are we still screwed? What do you guys think?
Shaan?
Well, you know, I'm not a expert analyst on box office trends and what they mean, so I can't really comment on what a few movies that did well means for the broader Community, I can only say that, you know, if you look at the titles that you just mentioned, all of them are really big IPs that have been around for a long time. And so what we're, you know,
except the one that didn't do as well, which was Red One, which is a new IP, and it didn't do great.
Yeah, but pretty intense cast.
True.
You know, I look at, you know, a movie like The Best Christmas Pageant ever, which was directed by the director of the show that I'm on, Dallas Jenkins, that has done, you know, well. I think it's up close to $33 million at the box office. I think it had a $10 million budget, but I think many of us are missing the kinds of like mid-tier budget films, or even lower budget but still really, you know, still professional budget films that we used to be able to go and celebrate, that took risks, that were very new and exciting. And now it feels like it's all sequels and rehashed IPs and, you know, like you know, superhero movies and things like that. I think people are fatiguing about all that stuff. Wicked obviously is a beloved, you know, not only a beloved IP but also, you know, an incredible performers that were, you know, so anybody who loves musicals is going to go and enjoy that and drag everybody with them, right? Yeah, that was how I got started. I started in musical theater when I was in high school. So
again, how do I not know this about you? You're like my twin.
Yeah, I don't talk about my music side in LA because I haven't really pursued it in LA. You know, my music life was in Minnesota, and then when I came here, it turned into acting.
Well, we need you there. So you're talking about these big ticket items, these movies that are being made now with arguably very, very well-known actors at the helm of them, even singers crossing over now into acting. So obviously they're going to fill seats at some point.
Yeah,
we're not that.
Yeah, I don't actually have, Justin, I don't have a very like, so I guess I should preface this by saying that I'm a problem solver. So for me, when I'm talking about the challenges we face as a community, it's never with despair. It's always about getting clarity so that we can take action together to solve problems. So, but if you wanted to hear my thoughts on kind of where we are as an industry right now, it's not pleasant news, but that doesn't mean I'm pessimistic about it. I'm still optimistic about it. I just think that we're in a very different time than people, you know, it's very hard for our performer community at large to even know what's happening, because most of them aren't involved in the union circles. They aren't reading the trades. They aren't really up on the latest information. So they're still operating like it's 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the industry is completely different today. Yeah. And so anything we can do to dispel kind of the misconceptions about how things are, or to update people on the challenges we face, will help more people waste less time and energy in.
You preach, brother. That's exactly what this is all about. I noticed during the pandemic, and I especially noticed during our strikes, when the public would say, fuck Hollywood, let it all fall apart, they're all pedophiles. I want to dispel that common understanding of what they think Hollywood. It's not that. 96% of us are not even famous actors living in mansions in the hills, and we make these films. We make all this content for them. I want them to know that these are normal people with special jobs, you know, that they have stories, they're human. And
the same thing happens in music. If you look at bands, most people can tell you who the lead singer is. Maybe they could mention the guitarist, the lead guitarist. Most people don't know who the other people are in the band.
Not at all.
And we know that the lead singer is not the band. The lead singer is a small part of the overall whole.
And that's fine too. Like for us, that's great. It's just the onus that comes with it. Sometimes the judgment that comes with it is unfair and a little ignorant. And I'd like to erase that line and answer questions that people have through people like you that are on the show.
Yeah.
You mentioned these big ticket movies in the middle of all this kind of regurgitated, recycled content that people were familiar with, that Wall Street really likes to shop, came this unexpected series that you are a series regular on and a very integral part of as Shmuel and The Chosen. And I'm one of those people like, listen, I love to watch Kenneth Branagh in Shakespeare. I personally suck at it. But when he performs, I understand it. And I feel the same way about the Bible. And the way that this is directed and cast and worked out is so lovely. It's just such lovely work what you guys are doing on The Chosen, truly.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just correct the spelling because or the pronunciation. So it's Shmuel.
Shmuel.
Just think of it like cow goes moo and then L. Shmuel. And
Shmuel.
I didn't name my own character. It's been my cross to bear for 6 years, telling people how to say my character's name.
What
It's
a nice problem to have.
well, yeah, a lot of the people on our set have a hard time saying Shmuel because you look at the spelling and you want to say it Shmuel, Shmuel, whatever. So so be it. The character is what it is, and I'm very blessed to have this integral part to the story. So yeah, I'm happy to address or share anything that you think would be helpful or cool about it.
Cool is just the fact that you're able to tell the story in a way that's very contemporary and people can access it. It's accessible,
I guess it's
like me.
People keep, it's easy for some people to classify it as a faith-based project, which it's not.
I don't see it that way. I never watch it that way because otherwise I wouldn't watch it.
Right. Yeah. It's not preachy. It's not meant to convert anybody. The show is just a dramatic television series that's based on the Gospels. Because we don't want to get murdered, we try not to violate scripture. But most of the show is the imagined potential lives of the people who lived 2,000 years ago. And the reason why it's called The Chosen and not The Jesus is because it's really about the people around Jesus who were present and impacted by his life while his ministry was active. And so you've got a show that is not pushing any particular faith tradition. It's not something that it really just provides all of this wonderful imaginative color around these stories that many of us grew up with, and so yeah, it's, as an actor, we want to tell stories that touch people's lives. And I don't know that there's ever been a project that has touched more people's lives and in the way that it is touching people's lives than The Chosen.
How awesome is that?
Well, is that I find that very intriguing. Like, is that the success of it is the fact that you don't preach and that you teach? Like, I know education is one of your things, and it seems to me that's kind of the line that is, you don't preach, you teach, you just inform, you're bringing the stories to life, and there's a passion behind bringing it to life, but it's not preaching down to people as a lot of people might expect from something like that.
I'm sure it's very educational for people who want to learn more about the time, but I would say that I think Dallas would say that his first goal is for people to be entertained. It's a television series. We want people to be, sometimes things we write, the show is written to be, engaging and compelling. And what we constantly hear from people is how they are constantly brought to tears or moved to tears by just the grace that's on display or by the tragedies that took place and all of that. So it's really, really meaningful to be a part of something like this that people already have an interest in. I mean, what IP is bigger than the Bible? It's the best-selling book of all time, right? So everybody knows that. But yeah, to be a part of something that is being executed well so that people are willing to give it a look, that is really cool.
You got me. I generally don't watch biblical or religious or sectoral stuff. I don't know. I'd always find it being biased or, I don't know, too poignant. And I just watched this like it was a drama. And mostly it was because of the lovely work that everybody was doing. I think the cast for Mr. Big Shot himself, it was quite good. And I love the lovely work that you're able to and given permission to do, the freedom that you're given to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, Shmuel is an interesting character because he's not a biblically based character, right? So there's you're not going to find Shmuel in the Gospels, but my character is meant to represent kind of the amalgamated Pharisee resistance to Jesus, thinking that he may be a false prophet, deceiving people.
Right. They called you the watchdog. The theological watchdog was kind of how they described him.
And so we have we're so blessed. We have our own convention every year now that we've done 2 years in a row where 4,000 to 6,000 of our supporters will come out and join us in Dallas and then in Orlando a few months ago. And a lot of times when people, come up to me, they're always like, "Oh, your character's a villain." And I find that so interesting because Shmuel has done nothing wrong. The only thing Shmuel has done is not accept Jesus right away as the Messiah. And so I like to make the point that my character really shows how somebody their heart can be in the right place. He's just trying to protect his people from what he thinks could be another con man. He was raised to be a devout follower of Torah, not just the written, but also the oral tradition. And just because someone doesn't accept what you want them to accept right away doesn't mean they're evil. And I think that that's a lesson that we are learning and need to learn now more than ever.
Right now.
That, you know, that just because someone is wrong doesn't mean that they're a bad person, or just because someone doesn't believe what you believe immediately doesn't mean that they're a bad person. But it's,
you hear that,
so
Justin?
tempting.
You're wrong, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I am wrong, but I do find that to be an interesting point too, because, you know, as my time when I was a scripted writer, I would always, you know, get in these arguments with my writing partner. I would say, dude, the bad guy doesn't know they're the bad guy in real life. Like, let's not write it that way. That's unrealistic. You know, I just watched a lot of that Penguin show on HBO, and it was amazing because there's not a good guy character in the entire show. They're all despicable, awful people.
And you're rooting for them.
None of those characters realize that. And it's like you're taking something ridiculous. I didn't think I was going to like it at all, by the way. I was just like, this is stupid. I'm tired of comic book stuff, just like you were saying before. I'm tired of this big budget comic book crap. But then I watched it and I saw some of the performances and I was like, okay, I can watch this. And it was really beyond the performances. It was this writing and this concept of the bad guy doesn't know they're the bad guy. They have these motivations. People get steered into a direction, and you have to look at what their influences were, where they got their information, what their fundamental ideals and values are. And they may be in opposition to yours, but put yourself in their shoes for a minute. They're not sitting there thinking, I'm trying to do harm.
Right.
That's just not realistic. Most people aren't thinking that. Even some of the worst people that you've ever thought of, they, in their mind, they weren't thinking that they were trying to do harm.
Well, and that word is the tricky one, especially in the last few years. I think just as a culture, is the idea of what is harmful. Is harm simple physical violence? No, I think a lot of people now would say harm could be certain ideas. It could be certain words that you say, certain phrases you believe. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who would say that what you or I believe, I mean, it could be anything, is harmful if it doesn't conform to what they want us to believe. So
intentioned and perception, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah. And some people actually think harming someone is justified if it's in service to their greater righteousness, you know, like somebody, like we would say sometimes war is justifiable to bring peace, or sometimes, you know, you must commit violence against someone to stop them from hurting others or whatever. So it's a tricky topic. But what I love about what The Chosen is doing is it's providing an opportunity for us to see the complexity, because so oftentimes we were raised to think, oh, Pharisees bad, Jesus good, you know, and now we're seeing, like, wait a minute, like, you can't paint a whole community with one brush. There were individuals that felt all different kinds of ways.
Oh my God, say that again. Yes. Yes. We can't, it's impossible, even in sectors where you say, okay, these people are this and these people are that. They can't be the same. It's not logical that people can be identical and think exactly the same way.
We're a tribal species. We need our tribes to survive. We literally can't survive alone. And so what's tricky is what you identify as your tribe and what you don't.
Right. And those similarities of cause can sometimes be justified and sometimes be a little, you know, sleight of hand, a little black magic, and people get pulled into the wrong path. And, you know, I've seen that, and, you know, being a person of color myself, there's been people that I have tried to help correct what I think is an error in their way of thinking, but I also don't necessarily judge against them because of it. Like I got into a long debate with a talent on one of my car shows that I was producing about using the N-word, which was very, very touchy at the time because it was right with the Michael Richards thing, and it was in this whole era. And, you know, I found that with the proper conversation and me not taking it too personally at first, I get along with that person now. And I would have never imagined that would be the case. I thought for sure, this guy's over here, I'm over here. He's saying things that I don't appreciate. Let's do this. That's my first initial thought, but it didn't.
You're touching on something that I think is really going to be a key conversation for the next era of our country, which is, do we want to coexist with people who feel differently than we do or not? Because if we don't want to coexist with others because they feel differently, I don't know who we're going to be able to associate with, because I'm sure if we all sat down and talked about lots of issues, we would find something that we disagree about and something that we feel similarly about. So if we're going to play the division game and the enemy game, there's no end to the where that leads, you know.
Absolutely. I think I've come to this.
If we're going to coexist with each other, we have to be able to find a way to respect and live with people who feel very differently about fundamental issues.
See, I want to understand people who think differently, and I want to be surrounded by people with different perspectives, because there's no growth in the same thing day after day, where whatever I think is justified is the only experience that I ever have. Mm-hmm. And if you're not growing, you're dying. Yeah. So I deliberately put myself in the way of people who think differently, have different experiences and backgrounds. Mm-hmm. You know, where I live right now, there's people who never leave this small town, and that's perfect by them. Mm-hmm. Perfectly fine. It's not my thing. I want to know what pizza tastes like in Chicago, and I want to go overseas, and I want to see these things that I see through my television and I hear about. I want to have a firsthand experience, but some people don't, and there's nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. Perfectly fine.
First of all, the pizza in Chicago is fantastic, because I was just there. Except I had Detroit pizza.
Oh, what the hell? What are you doing?
It was great. Have you ever had a Detroit pizza in Chicago? It's the square deal with like
Sicilian pizza.
It's like square pan pizza. It's almost like what Pizza Hut was back in the 80s.
Darling, you grew up in Cleveland with some of the best Italian food in the country, and you're talking about Pizza Hut. I'm worried.
It was made, look, Detroit pizza in Chicago is obviously made by Italians.
And you're not wrong, because that's your perspective.
Yes.
This is Greige against the machine. It's pizza and it's politics all together.
It is. It's all together. And the more heated debate is about the pizza.
I do, in my heart, I do know this. This is true for me. Everybody on the planet, regardless of what they say that they want and what they need, or how we fight and disagree with each other, I think everybody wants one of the same two things. They're either trying to have a good life experience, joy, happiness, wealth, whatever that is that they define, or they're trying to avoid feeling pain. Mm-hmm. And they quantify that. That's it. Feel good, don't feel bad. And if we can help facilitate that for each other, not deliberately get in the way or make it worse, or you know, I think that's the best gift we can give each other. Yeah. But that's my.
Well, and that's the point of the art. Okay, so Shaan, I want to ask you about education, because
yes,
when we talk about educating actors, you're not necessarily talking about the craft of acting, right? You're talking about overall and what the profession is about. Like, what is your take on where education for actors specifically needs to go, and how do you feel you can participate in that to take the entire profession to the next level? Because I know you feel strongly about having a positive impact on, you know, your colleagues and the people in your profession.
Well, this is my singular passion in union service, is the member education part. And absolutely, it involves craft, but there are what I've kind of identified as 4 different categories of information that I think every performer, union or not, needs to, you know, be conscientious about and to focus on. The first one absolutely is the craft. And I, you know, basically say, if you're going to call yourself a professional and offer yourself to the industry, you better at least be a capable storyteller in at least one medium and one genre of the work that we do. So mediums, of course, for those who don't know, would be like stagecraft, television, film, you know, motion performance capture, voiceover, singing, dancing. There's many ways that we can tell stories, but you better be proficient in at least one of those. And then also within the genres of either drama, single camera comedy, or multi-camera comedy, or what we would call dramatic, subtly comedic, or broadly comedic work, which is pretty much everything we do on cameras in one of those 3 buckets. And so start there, become a very proficient storyteller in at least one medium and genre. So that's really the craft. And then, you know, how you do, you know, prepare your stories, and how you develop your characters, and you do your text analysis and get specific and make sure that you can perform when we need you to be able to perform. The second bucket, though, is when you want to monetize that craft, because there's lots of really wonderful artists out there who aren't really trying to make money with it. They just love doing it, and it's something they do for their church, or it's something they do for their community. It's something they do for their own expression. But if you're actually trying to pursue this as a profession and make money off of it, then you have to deal with the business side of things. And so there are what I call 4 different paths to success when it comes to the business side of things. And The way that I quantify success is simply making a living with your art alone. That's what I consider success. It's not fame, it's not fortune. It's just, if you can raise a family as an artist, that I think is a blessing in this day and age. And so for me, those 4 paths include when you're trying to get a job telling other people's stories, which is when auditioning and having headshots and resumes and casting profiles and all that stuff becomes important. But people succeed every day creating their own films and telling their own stories. And so that's also a completely independent path that you can take to establish yourself. Or if you're not interested in creating your own films, you can develop industry relationships with people who are making their own films, and they will create work with you and include you in things. So writers, directors, producers, executives, etc. And then we have access now to something that never existed before, which is patronage platforms. So if you create a Patreon or Kickstarter, Indiegogo's, YouTube subscriptions, Instagram subscriptions, you can have a niche following that helps you pay all of your bills. If you just put out, one thing a month and people are giving you $5, $10, $15, whatever it is for your content. And so we have all these independent paths to monetize our craft once we have something to offer. And then the next bucket would be the union, because if you're going to work in on-camera film and television, you're going to run up against SAG-AFTRA at a certain point. And anybody who thinks that they don't need the union was not around in 2023 when everything was shut down by the union. Doesn't matter whether you were Tom Cruise or whether you were Tom Who, like you had the union reigned supreme. And so if you're not engaged with or understanding the organization that controls our profession, then you will be at a severe disadvantage. Even if you're not union yet, you should know our union rules, our contracts, because you're only going to work in professional film and television if it's a SAG-AFTRA project. And so that's something you should be aware of. And then the last bucket is perhaps the most important one, which is self-care, which is making sure you're managing your mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, physical well-being. Because if you can't be reliable, it doesn't matter. All the rest doesn't matter. If we can't count on you because you're messed up and you can't perform, then your house is a mess. You got to get that in order first.
Hear, hear.
Awesome. So Shaan not only teaches and mentors, he has an extraordinarily popular podcast, all kinds of projects on that's growing. He's published. I mean, he walks the walk. This is his life. I've never met somebody more committed, I think, to this sport that we call acting, that we call entertainment, than you, Shaan. Yeah. And but it's in a healthy way. Like, you find a way, as far as I can tell, and we've had talks, you find a way to find the balance in all of it where it's not consuming you. You're still human. You still have a human life, but you have this wildly rounded understanding about the inside and the outside of the industry, where you're always kind of looking in at yourself or looking out at the business side of it. So you're never lost. With that, you're not a probability analyst trying to know where we're headed right now. It's almost impossible. We know what we see. We know what we see on paper and in the trades, but it's changing. It's changing in such a massive way. The platforming, my God, who would have thunk back in 2007, even as Netflix was coming into play, there would be this whole world outside of the AMPTP where people can make content and people would want it. People would want to support it, want to invest in it, maybe, and give it an audience. I mean, it's just crazy what's out there now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Which leads me to my question that I have for not even just you guys, but for everyone. This is the question I keep putting into the universe, because I look at the industry and I look at the trends, and I'm like you, Shaan, in the fact that I want to be proactive. I get it. There's problems, whatever. Got it. I establish the problems. I see the history of it, and I use that history to formulate a proactive stance to move forward. So I'm looking at things right now, and today I was looking at the Comcast deal with Warner Brothers Discovery that happened, and a lot of stuff that's going on there, which I thought looked very positive. But I'm looking at the fact that the ad-supported model is coming back into the digital streaming stuff. Yet, I feel like, and you guys as members of the union know this, the streaming rates are not the same as what you guys would get for network shows, especially. Movies is a little bit different, but especially in the TV department, because TV isn't where these things are being made anymore. Right. We're making them for these streaming platforms and whatnot. So I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, okay, well, it feels to me like we slowed everything down for a little while. We had strikes and other issues we had to work out, which I feel like the big networks and studios needed because they needed time to get their revenue models back in line. But now they're cracking the formula. You're seeing what Amazon did, where they started charging for their service on a separate rate and added ads in to everybody who was already getting the service before. And now if you want to get rid of that stuff, you have to pay even more. Netflix has added advertising. This new Comcast Warner Brothers Discovery model is based on the base level tier, which is now ad supported. So it feels to me like they cut us out a little bit on their top level games, saying, no, this is streaming. The revenue shouldn't be the same as TV because we don't have the same ad support. We're not getting the same buy rates. We're not doing upfronts, this, that, and the other thing. And now they've kind of backdoor slid it in to the point where it is ad supported again. Also subscription supported, but ad supported. And as you know, members of the union, where do you guys see the next level of negotiation for getting the equity back that switching to the streaming model has kind of sent into the ether? Like, how do we get that back?
That's a complicated question. So you're talking to the guy that was one of the most involved negotiators on the negotiating committee last year. And I was at almost every single W&W. I was, an integral part of the plenary process, the negotiation process, the strike leadership, and then the second round of negotiations, and then the ratification process. I was the only negotiator and only national board member who spoke out publicly about why I had to vote no against the contract I gave a year of my life to help. I love that. And if I would have just gone along with what Fran wanted me to do, I would be, in a very cushy place sitting next to her up there in national leadership. But because I am not in leadership to make Fran or any leader happy, I'm in leadership to make the memberships successful as much as possible, then I have to do what I think is in their best interest. And if that means educating them about why this didn't hit the mark, then so be it. And it's not because I have some unreasonable expectation of what we should have been able to accomplish. I actually think I had a very reasonable, perhaps one of the most reasonable expectations of what we could accomplish. And part of the reason I was able to have that objective view is because I was insulated from the negative or positive effects of the contract. I'm on a show where I've had stability for 6 years and we're guaranteed funding for the next couple of years. So I don't need to make a decision that's in my own economic interest or disinterest. I'm fine. I'm on a show that's independent of the AMPTP. So other people who are desperate for work or desperate to not lose their work were in a more vulnerable position than I was. And so I felt like I could be more objective about what we should be able to accomplish. Plus, I am one of the most integrated and connected union leaders in connection with membership on the ground and hearing what they're thinking and feeling. The volume of communication I have, our solidarity events where I have hundreds of members who will come and participate and talk to us about what they're feeling from all across the union, across all 25 locals. And so what I witnessed made it so that there was no way I could support what it is that we actually put in that contract. Now, are there some positive things about it? For sure, because I have dear friends that were able to vote yes on it. But I personally couldn't because of my own standards and my own values. And so when you ask a question about, how are we going to adapt to what the studios and networks are doing, the last time we struck this contract was in 1980. So if we go by that timing, the next time our membership will have the will to strike again will be in 2060 or something like that, right? It's possible that we could get the members to go on strike sooner than that if we really build our solidarity, if we really develop strong connections and bonds with our members, if we deliver tangible value where they realize what a resource SAG-AFTRA is and how much we need to fight to defend it, if they really confront how difficult it is to make a living, and the threat of AI. Part of what we went to war for last year was to make acting sustainable again in the streaming era. We failed to accomplish that. One of the ways we were going to try to do that was to get a piece of the revenue from these streaming models that would be shared with the cast of everybody that was on those shows. We failed to achieve that. The bonus that we ended up with that was modeled after what the Writers Guild got is very dubious in its setup and whether it will actually deliver anything to anybody of any value. And again, it's only going to be distributed to those who are already on successful shows that are watched within the first 90 days of being on a platform. And those residuals are going to be, those bonuses are going to be a a bonus on your residuals, which are calculated on your billing. So if you're already one of the series regulars, you're going to get a nice hefty bonus, which is giving the rich more and giving those less even less. And so the idea behind revenue share was to make sure that a rising tide lifts all boats. And all we did is make sure that the successful and rich get even richer. And the idea that
what's happening in America.
And they estimated the value of that bonus, even if it worked the way they theorized, which I don't think it will come anywhere close, is $40 million a year. And what we were asking for was $1 billion a year. And we got talked down to $500 million a year. Yeah. And so that's a ridiculously small fraction of what we know that we're worth, what we knew we could accomplish. And there's all kinds of inside baseball things we'd have to talk about as to why we weren't able to achieve some of those things. But I would just say that we are in a very vulnerable position, and that, of course, it's a ruthless business. And so all of these networks and studios are doing exactly what they are being forced to do by companies like Netflix, which have essentially tech broed the industry. And so now it's not at all about art, it's about content. It's not about investing in your worker base and in developing your artists. It's about, a race to the bottom and just throwing money at problems, hoping that's going to create something lucrative, which has been an absolute failure. And they threw billions and billions of dollars at content that didn't go anywhere. And now they're scaling back, and now they're exporting shows overseas because it's cheaper to make it there than to make it here. And so, it's a big mess. And it was caused by corporate greed and exploitation of what had previously been kind of a cultural, a cultural, beautiful aspect of American life. Like we exported Hollywood around the world to teach people about life and about human behavior and
connected us.
Yeah. And so now what we've got is just a lot of real vapid people not trying to get fired from their corporate positions, wanting to use established IPs, not wanting to take risks. And the money's getting scaled back, so they're not investing in artistic development as much. And so much of the cost of everything has been put onto the independent producers or on performers or on the casting director.
Completely.
So we're being hollowed out from the inside right now. And so what that means is we have to get more creative about how we solve these problems. And that will mean creating more of our own stories and telling our own stories. It will mean independent, low budget features need to be invested in, because we can raise that money amongst ourselves as artists if we really want to. It means really uplifting each other in every way possible to get through these financially difficult times. It means working with our state and federal governments to create incentives that keep work in the country. I'm not a big fan of state incentives that California is trying to steal work from Atlanta, which is trying to steal work from Detroit, which is trying to steal work from New Mexico. Like, we shouldn't be pitting our own people against each other. We should be keeping work in the United States and actually making the United States an attractive place for foreign people to come and make their films in our own country. I mean, that's the kind of thinking we should do if we want to preserve this cultural institution.
I do sense there's an opportunity here, since we're talking about your journey and ours too. There's an opportunity for a tremendous surge in independent projects. I see a lot of my friends who were maybe series regulars or heavily recurring that have production companies and trying to, separate themselves from the AMPTP and the limitations that brings in Wall Street. They're making their own. I have a colleague who mortgaged her home to make her own project and promoted it herself. And it's a hard way to go. But she made something incredible, and people love it.
You could say it's a hard way to go, but I don't know that the traditional model is serving people all that much better anyway.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think The Chosen proves that, though, right? I mean, it's outside of the Hollywood algorithm. It's not part of that literal machine that makes these determinations, as I've dealt with at Netflix myself. Is that the key? Do we have to find and create new platforms that we can create our own algorithms?
Well, I think that's happening. In fact, there's a documentary called Union about the unionization of Amazon workers. I just spoke with one of the producers a few days ago, and the link that they sent me to check out was one that said you can pay it forward, which is what Angel Studios and then The Chosen really launched 6 years ago, where you could the show is free, but you could pay for other people to be able to see it. And as soon as we made the show completely free and voluntary for people to pay for it, the revenue went through the roof. Like, actually, people do want to support stuff that they really find valuable, and you just have to trust in your audience and show them something great. Now, The Chosen is kind of a outlier because not every show or not every project is going to have 2,000 years of built up IP around it. So the question becomes, can you take a completely new piece of IP, and can the crowdfunding, pay it forward model work?
I say
model work?
I say yes because we're that old, and because these stories that haven't been told yet from different ethnicities or backgrounds, whatever, are just as valuable as anything else. And there's plenty of diversity out there, plenty of newness. So I say yes. Yeah.
Well, I certainly think that The Chosen has paved a way for people to realize that we have much more power than we think, and we're proving out models. I mean, there's not another TV show that launches in theaters, then goes to streaming, and then gets broadcast on broadcast television. So it's really something remarkable to be able to go watch my own show in my local AMC, then see it on Amazon, and then go watch it on the CW. Like, that's just crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that? What's the market that's helping that? I mean, to be able to do a theatrical and then go straight, like that's an amazing business model. Is there a certain section of the market that is helping bolster that? Like you saw with Tyler Perry, he was making $8 million movies that made 80 million. And it was because he found that Black church market. He found this marketplace of people that were ready to consume content that people had just overlooked. The coasts had overlooked an even newer part of the flyover states that they had never thought about before. What's that market that's doing that for The Chosen?
Well, here's the only way I can think to answer your question. Most shows and films accept that there are parts of the market that they're just going to miss, because not everybody goes to see movies in theaters or has theaters close by. So they just have to accept they're not going to draw those people. Some people don't have the ability to pay for cable or go see movies, so they just watch stuff on broadcast television. Some people don't watch broadcast television and they don't go to the movie theaters, but they will watch stuff on streaming. So because of the way our show is being received, we have people coming out of the woodwork to say, I know how we can get this in front of this untapped market. So we've had a whole foundation form called the Come and See Foundation, whose only job is to get our show in front of 1 billion people as quickly as possible. And part of the way they're doing that is translating it into 600 languages so that you can watch our show in your native language. And 600 languages covers 95% of the planet. So we're already the most translated show in the world at about 60, 70 languages, but we're aiming for 600. And so I really, Justin, what it is that the community is coming around our show to make sure that in every possible way, people are getting exposed to the message of the show, which isn't just the message of Christianity. If you just watch it as a TV series for dramatic and entertainment purposes, it's a message of love, of forgiveness, of patience, of kindness, of leadership, of all of these wonderful things that we would all want to reinforce.
Okay, so I'm a Cleveland kid. Lisa's a Cleveland kid. There was a story that was created here in Cleveland that is very important to modern mythology, which is Superman.
Oh, jeez.
And Superman has kryptonite. So I've found that stories aren't compelling without kryptonite. It's just that simple. Every story has to have that moment where everything stinks to get us to that uplifting moment, to get us to that big reveal, to get us to that hero's moment, or to the tragedy at the end. Like they didn't overcome that kryptonite. So for you, as a storyteller, as an educator, as a wise, learned man, as we have learned here today, what do you think is the best piece of advice that you can give an actor who's at their kryptonite moment to get to the end of the story the way that you, Shaan, see that their stories should be ending? How do we get past the kryptonite moment?
With each other. I think one of the cool things that's developed around the show that I'm on is we're now getting invited as cast members to go speak around the country and around the world. And so people will pay us an appearance fee to come to their city, their church, their community, and basically do a 15 to 30 minute talk about things. And I did one in Boise, Idaho in February, and I shared a story in front of 14,000 people in their Ford Center, which is their kind of stadium in Nampa, Idaho. I talked about self-harm because there's a big problem in Idaho of people hurting themselves, and I wanted to draw attention to the fact that they're not alone. but I also wanted to share why it's so important that we take care of each other. And there is a story. I'm not going to pull up the quote now. It'll take too much time. But, Margaret Mead is quoted as the woman who said, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. But she had another quote where a student of hers asked her about when she thought the first sign of civilization showed up in a culture. So when did a culture become civilized? And the student thought that she was going to say, arrowheads and pots and things like that. And actually, she said it was a femur, a thigh bone that had been broken and then healed. Because she said that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you're dead. You're just meat for beasts. Like, nobody can survive long enough to heal on their own. But if you find a femur that has been healed, it means someone took the time to carry that person to safety and tend to them until they were recovered. And so she said the first sign of civilization is when we care for
Community.
Other people. Community. And so if you're at your lowest point, that tells me that you need community. You need other people who can lift you when you get tired, because we all get tired at certain times. And so
come to Georgia, come get me. Both of you.
So oftentimes we're trying to fight everything on our own, and that's just not possible. We need other people. And I know it's stressful because people have been isolated. We've been through a very isolating time. And then also with social media and what's happening in the world, it feels like we're even more isolated politically, socially, just, health-wise, et cetera. So it's at these times when we really need to ask for help, where we need to seek out community, where we need to know that we can't do it on our own. So, because once you get a community around you that are healthy, that are uplifting, that love you, that support you, you can solve any problem together that's in your way.
So that's why we wanted you on. That's kind of what this podcast is about. It's about telling the stories of people who feel invisible. So it gives them a little bit of a light of fire under themselves to shine again.
And the great thing about the union is it's a built-in community that so many of us are already a part of. And so you literally, when you're a union member, you actually have a community that has your back, that's built into what you do for a living and what you do for a passion. So
check in with each other.
Yeah, but it's why people join acting classes. It's why people, go to churches. It's why people join unions. It's why people join other associations, is for that fellowship, for that community. And so my advice to anybody who's in a down season is you're not alone, and don't try to solve it alone. Like, people are there who are going through what you're going through, and connect with them and solve these problems together.
I love you, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I think Nerdy Bear Studios, who's listening, sums it up perfectly. Awesome.
Nice.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I think that these are definitely the kind of conversations we'd love to have, and we'd love to have you back sometime. And, I feel like in the future, we're going to have some panels as well, and just kind of open up some topics.
Oh God, Shaan, more panels.
Yes, more panels. But, I think it's a good way to reach people. And I really enjoyed hearing your story. And I think that the positive light that you bring into the entire community is exactly what all of us need. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on as soon as we possibly could, because we all need to hear that message. And moving forward in the industry, I hope that everyone can remember that entertainment is all about turning a light on for people, not about turning one off.
100%. 100%.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, stick around. Our website, our YouTube, Lisa's IG, where a lot of people are watching right now.
Yeah, it's all out there. We'll give it to you.
At GATMpod or GATMpod@gmail.com. Shaan, is there any information that you want to share where people can find you, socials or anything?
I'm very easy to find on everything.
Yeah,
Shaan Sharma. Shaan Sharma, Shaan_Sharma, Shaan-Sharma, Shaan Sharma. And I think you'll be able to find him. I hope. Yeah. And you should.
Absolutely. So we got more great guests even this week. So please tune back in, watch our socials. We're going to be cranking out some fun stuff. So until next time, everyone, stay calm and stay in the mix.
Thank you.
Mwah.